What is up, guys? It is Quinn here, and today I'm going to be talking about, I guess, kind of like a concept in fantasy football, a buzzword or a buzz phrase that you see a lot. If you go on YouTube in the comment sections, Twitter, Instagram, really anything where you have fantasy football or even NFL, I bet you're going to see the term injury prone. Someone talks about a player who may have been hurt last year, the last 2 years. Everyone goes out. I'm not drafting that player. They are injury prone. You will see it all over the place. I know I see it. And when I see people comment that, it kind of just rubs me the wrong way because I feel like people just do not truly understand what injury prone means. Just because you're injured in back to back years, you have, a shoulder injury one year, then you roll your ankle the next year. Like, that is not an injury prone player. Injury prone is someone who consistently injures the exact same thing. And, that first injury then is going to cause, multiple injuries after. Being super healthy through a few seasons and then suffering injuries in back to back years, like that is not a player being injury prone. So I'm going to be going through a few players who I think kind of have that tag attached to them this season, talk about some players last season who had that, attached to them and then actually were really solid fantasy assets, and then just talk about maybe one more player who a long time ago was considered injury prone and then now is, one of the most reliable players in fantasy football. So let's jump into that first player who I think currently has like that injury prone designation, and it is Christian McCaffrey. And I think my biggest point here with CMC is that bad injury luck does not equal injury prone. So I'm going to be going through the games played versus how many games he could have played in, basically his entire college and NFL career. So starting off here in college, as a freshman, he played in 12 out of 13 games, so only missed one game. As a sophomore, played in 14 out of 14 games the entire season. As a junior, played in 11 out of 13, and I think one of those he may have missed, just declaring for the draft. But even if he didn't, missed 2 out of 13 games. Then his first 3 seasons in the NFL, played in 16 out of 16 games. So through 6 seasons, college and NFL, we're looking at 3 total missed games. Then obviously he starts missing games in year 4 and year 5. So year 4, he plays in 3 out of 16. Year 5, 7 out of 17. Basically, the way I'm looking at this, it's not that all of a sudden Christian McCaffrey is an injury prone player. It's that for 6 seasons, Christian McCaffrey was very, very lucky in terms of injuries. At the running back position, to only miss 3 games in 6 years, like that is insane. Running backs get hurt. That's just what happens. So I think basically he was very, very lucky for 6 years. And then he's been pretty unlucky the last two. He's basically kind of, almost had it coming in terms of like the luck department. And here's the thing. If he like was continuing to suffer, one specific injury, then I think we could talk about this. But basically these injuries have been all over. So looking at his 2020 injuries, he had a thigh strain, then a high ankle sprain, then an AC joint sprain. Then in 2021, he had a low ankle sprain. 2021, a hamstring strain. So those are all over the place. He did have 2 ankle sprains, but I mean, those are like a year apart. So there's no overlap. One was high ankle, one was low ankle. So he is still my clear cut 101. He's my top running back. I would take him first in all drafts just because he has an elite ceiling. If this guy plays a full season, he will blow every other running back out of the water. So I'm not saying, his ADP is getting destroyed by, this injury prone narrative, but I think people are picking him at like 2 or 3 in spite of him being injury prone, where I would argue that he really is just not injury prone, just been, very lucky early on in his career and then very unlucky the last 2 seasons. Now the next player is going to be another running back, and it is Saquon Barkley. I think just another guy who's gotten decently unlucky in the injury department. We're going to look back at his college games played versus games missed, and then same thing in the NFL, just like we did with CMC. So starting off as a freshman, played in 11 out of 13 games, so missed 2. As a sophomore, played 14 out of 14, the full season. Then as a junior, he also played a full season, 13 out of 13 games. Then we go into year 1 of the NFL. This is when he tore it up in fantasy football, averaged like 24 PPR points per game as a rookie, played in 16 out of 16 games. Then in year 2, played in 13 out of 16 games. He actually suffered a high ankle sprain that season, but came back like crazy fast. Like only missing 3 games for a high ankle sprain is pretty crazy. So he misses 3 games that year. Year 3, that's where he tears his ACL. I think he played in 2 games out of 16, injured in week 2. Then last year, year 4, played in 13 out of 17 games. So he had the ACL tear in 2020, the high ankle sprain in 2019, and then he had a low ankle sprain in 2021, and then started off slow because he was coming off of that ACL. So those are injuries, 2 ankle sprains, but once again, one was a high ankle, one was low ankle. The one in 2021, he literally was like running after a play, was like watching the ball, and then steps on someone's foot, rolls his ankle. Like, what are we going to do about that? That is just random. It's wildly unlucky. So I'm very, very in on Saquon Barkley this year, and I think he is a total steal at the 2-3 turn. So now we're going to look back at some players in 2021 who were considered injury prone. I would talk about these players. The comments would be, not drafting that guy, he's injury prone, whatever, unreliable, can't stay on the field, all that sorts of stuff. The first guy is going to be Joe Mixon. And this one honestly never really made sense to me because even in like the missing games department, he was never really brutal. So he missed 2 games in both of his first 2 seasons. So played in 14 out of 16. Then he actually played a full 16-game season in 2019, but he was pretty inefficient, kind of disappointed in that year. And then in 2020, played in only 6 out of 16 games. So he was okay through 6 games, then missed the last 10. Kind of looked like he maybe could have come back, didn't. And so now he's getting that injury prone label. They're saying he can't handle the workload because he really was like the, true workhorse that season. He can't handle that workload. Then he goes into 2021, carries the ball 292 times, catches 42 passes, plays in 16 out of 17 games, and then finishes as the RB4 in total points, the RB7 in points per game. So if you faded Joe Mixon because, you thought he was injury prone, you probably missed out. If you faded him for other reasons, that's fine, if you miss out because of that. But I just think missing out by labeling a player injury prone when they're not actually injury prone can kind of be a problem. We also saw that with James Conner, who basically had 3 seasons as the starter in Pittsburgh. So in 2018, this is where he filled in for Le'Veon Bell, played in 13 out of 16 games, big workload that year. Then in 2019, he misses 6 games, plays in 10 out of 16. And then in 2020, plays in 13 out of 16. But throughout those 2019 and 2020 seasons, his production started to fall off. He was kind of in and out of the lineup, constantly banged up. And this was like the narrative. He can't handle the starter workload. He just can't do it. So in 2021, he goes to the Cardinals. People kind of forget about him. He gets drafted outside the top 100 players. Then he goes out and puts together the healthiest season of his career, plays in 15 out of 17 games, carries the ball over 200 times, 37 receptions, is their goal line back, getting in on those tough runs up the middle, and he finishes as the RB5 in total points and then the RB9 in points per game. So he's someone, kind of written off because of those injuries, ends up, being pretty healthy and finishing as like a top 12 running back, locked and loaded. And then one more player, and I think this is just an interesting example because he was someone who was considered injury prone like 2014, 2015, 2016, like way back. But I think, now he's become someone who's considered, the total opposite. Everyone expects him to be on the field 16 or I guess now 17 out of 17 games. And I just think that's how quickly this stuff could change. If a guy like CMC or Saquon turns in back-to-back full seasons, you're like, this is going to be a total distant memory. And that player is Keenan Allen. So in 2013, as a rookie, he played in 15 games, but actually suffered a preseason PCL tear. Then in 2014, plays in 14 games, but he was banged up all throughout the year. Rib contusion, groin strain, quad strain, clavicle fracture. I don't even know what that is, but he was dealing with a ton of stuff. Then in 2015, he deals with a hip strain and then misses 8 games with a lacerated kidney. So at this point, he's dealt with a ton of different injuries all over the place. People are starting to be concerned. Then in 2016, he tears his ACL week 1, misses 15 games, obviously out for the year. So, from 2013 to 2016, He's just riddled with all these injuries. And if someone's getting injured like that much and they're actually injury prone, that is just going to get worse as they get older. But as you know, you can probably expect from this video, from 2017 to 2021, he has played in 78 out of 81 games. So he's almost like the reverse Christian McCaffrey in the sense that he got super unlucky with injuries early on and then has kind of become very fortunate the last, 4 or 5 years, where he's only missed 3 games since 2017. And now he's viewed as one of the most trustworthy and reliable wide receivers in the NFL. So I just think it's important to show examples of guys who have gotten that label but have kind of moved past it. And I just think a lot of it comes down to luck. Now, hear me out. It's possible Christian McCaffrey steps on the field week 1, tears his ACL. Obviously don't want that to happen because I'm going to be having him on a lot of teams and you want to see him out there. But like these injuries happen to these positions. I think a lot of it is pretty random. But Christian McCaffrey could go out season-ending injury. The same thing could happen to Jonathan Taylor, Najee Harris. Just because these players haven't been injured doesn't mean it's not going to happen. And just because these players have been injured doesn't mean it's guaranteed to happen again. And so there may be like a slightly higher likelihood, but I think people way blow it out of proportion. And when you play this game where, you fade the guys who got injured last year, then, those guys fall, you get them as a value, and then you're in on the players who haven't gotten injured, there's still a decent chance those guys go down. So I feel like when you're limiting your pool of players to draft from, especially when you're talking about injury-prone stuff, I feel like you're kind of doing yourself a disservice. So I thought this was like an interesting topic to cover. It's something you see a lot, especially with me putting out content. You'll see it in a lot of the comment sections. So I thought it was, a solid thing to discuss. Let me know what you guys think about this down below in the comment section. If you found this interesting or informative, hit that subscribe button and like the video. But thank you guys for stopping by, staying all the way through, and I'll see you in the next one.